Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. It was a fun Thursday. We're going to recap at the end here, the second part of this. Really, we're going to recap what went down in the 479 in Fort Smith as the city honored two hometown heroes, just newly minted NBA champions. You know them, you love them. They're Pro Hogs. Both of them won state titles at Fort Smith Northside at different times. They played in the title game together and didn't win that one. We'll explain that, and in that, which helps explain just how deep and how good Arkansas talent is. I talk about it all the time. It's a big reason why I do this. You know, Razorbacks basketball recruiting is a big part of the content I put out, but so is covering basketball throughout the state at every level, high schools, the Pro Hogs, all of it. And so it was really cool to witness this celebration, be part of it, get to enjoy some of that yesterday. But today we're going to start with talking about J.J. Andrews again. The iron is hot. The guy is riding a wave. Coming off this past weekend, Nike Peach Jam Championship MVP honors. JJ, the future Hog who committed back in May, is just stacking up, racking up, titles and MVP honors. But he's also won over, I think, more and more respect from some of the national analysts. We'll see if it leads to a consensus 5-star ranking. Certainly, ESPN was there in its most recent update in early July, where JJ emerged as the 12th best player in the country, a 5-star. 247 Sports moved him up considerably, up to 13, but still a 4-star, the highest rated 4-star, one spot away from 5-star status. I think in their next updates, both of those services should have him in the top 10. That's my opinion on what they should do. I don't know that I have an opinion of what they will do, because I was bewildered by the fact that they ever let him slide as much as they did and dropping him to a 4-star. Imagine JJ, Billy Richmond, on the court together. Yeah, two dogs. Yeah, I mean, the possibilities, and we've talked some about that, and we'll talk more about it in future episodes. Possibilities are endless in terms of what you can put on the court with J.J. Andrews, because it's John Calipari via retention, which would be a dynamic duo if you had JJ and Billy Richmond III, which would be year 3 for BR3 under Cal at Arkansas. A lot of ways that could go, but we'll see where JJ's rankings and 5-star stuff go. But for now, today we're going to talk about him as a recruiter. And you think we say all the time, we've talked about it the last few episodes, almost every time we come on, if we talk recruiting, we have to remind everybody, John Calipari's the best to do it. He's the best now. He's the best then, the best ever. And it's, a big part of why he was a Naismith Hall of Fame inductee over a decade ago. But it doesn't mean that he doesn't utilize and lean on the players that that have come up before him, that have played with him before, whether it's embracing NBA players, former players, whether they made it pro or not. But once you get a guy committed, he's kind of your guy, right? He didn't have to play for you yet to be part of the assignment. And the assignment is to put around JJ the best possible cast that you can via this 2026 recruiting class. And yesterday we came on and talked about how the national perception is it's a down class. One analyst said, this is the worst class he's ever seen. I didn't name that analyst. It's a household name in terms of college basketball, coverage. But at the same time, we identified the fact that for Calipari, the job is to show whether it's a strong class, a weak class, somewhere in the middle, show the players that he's targeting how he's going to help them get to the next level and potentially as a one and done. And then you're also looking at, making sure if it is a down class that you're recruiting the right ones and not walking into a situation that's going to fizzle out like a dud Roman candle on the 4th of July that doesn't do more than just spark a little bit. So J.J. Andrews was a great start to this class. He is a winner. He's a day one impact guy at the college level. We'll see where things go for him in terms of one and done in a year's time after he's been on campus. Don't forget he's got a senior year coming up. But I don't think you could have a better start and top priority on your board than J.J. Andrews. And I have him, again, I've mentioned this the last week. It was almost a week ago last Saturday when I put out my top 25 for the 2026 class. I've got JJ as my 4th player on that list. I mean, there's a case he's number 1. I acknowledge that, but I've got him 4th. But it's just a great place to be. He's got a claim as the best player in the country, and certainly proven that he was the best player on the best team. But I think it goes beyond that because it's back-to-back seasons and it's back-to-back years of winning a Peach Jam where JJ was arguably the best player, the driving force on each one of them. Now he only got one MVP of the two. That was this past year. But how do you get on the coattails of this and ride that success and use it while the iron's hot? If you're John Calipari, have JJ as a recruiter. Let's not forget last season, Darius Acuff Jr. visited Arkansas in May. Well, May's when JJ committed to Arkansas. Then after Peach Jam, right after it, late July, Darius Acuff Jr. committed to Arkansas. He was the first commit off the board for Calipari in the 2025 recruiting class, and that was a loaded class, by the way. But he was also the first five-star top 10 rated guy committed anywhere. And then Arkansas started playing out visits, starting in September with Mika Murinen, late September. Then you got into October and you had more visits, including Malik Thomas, who Darius Acuff Jr. was brought back onto campus for a visit for that weekend. That was the big Tennessee football game. The fourth-ranked Volunteers go down in flames at Reynolds Razorback Stadium on a Razorback team that went to a ball game and won a bowl game. Say what you will about the status of the football program right now, but that was kind of Arkansas' Super Bowl last year, and you had a committed player recruiting another top 10 rated five-star guard to help him, make this backcourt a rich one when you come into this upcoming season. And the 25-26 roster. We're going to talk more about the guards and backcourt this weekend. I'm going to have a segment. I've already gone kind of deep dived on the front line and then the wing players. We're going to get into the guards, the ones and twos very soon. And so, but you saw Darius Acuff Jr. used multiple times as a recruiter. Came back in later when Nate Ament was on campus. Obviously, and Ament ended up at Tennessee. Arkansas was among the final handful of teams there. And once upon a time, it was thought to maybe Arkansas was in the lead. I think the NIL game on that one, Arkansas, there was limits with everybody, and I think Arkansas got to a point where it wasn't going to cross another line and another threshold there. That was a big part of that. But at any rate, we've seen Calipari in just the most recent examples for the 2025 class using one of his committed players, to come in. And remember, Acuff wasn't signed yet. He couldn't sign until November, yet he was on campus in October when Malik Thomas visited. And we know how that ended with both of them signing early. So JJ, here are multiple reasons why this is a great idea. We know Arkansas and Calipari have visits lined up, tentative dates that we brought you end of August, just next month, basically a month from now as we're at the end of July, with the big man I've got him 6th ranked in the country. He's top 15 according to 247 Sports, the number one center of the country, Erfan Diani. We've talked a lot about him. You got to look out for teams like Houston, UConn, Kentucky, maybe. There's some other ones in pursuit there, but Arkansas has prioritized him. Calipari's prioritized him. We've gone through all the different markers for what that looks like when Calipari was on his campus at Iowa United Prep. Later for other events, including MBPA Top 100 camp in June, courtside a whole bunch lately. But you've got that visit coming up August 29th through the 31st. Arkansas football will open its season at home against Alabama A&M in the middle of that visit on the 30th, August 30th at Reynolds Razorback Stadium. Then you've got Jordan Smith Jr., who's the two guard or combo guard version of what J.J. Andrews is on the wing in terms of being a dynamic two-way player. In fact, I think Jordan Smith Jr. at 6'2" is the best two-way player in the country. You understand why he's the 2nd ranked player. That's where I have him on my board. In my rankings, other services have him that high as well. You got him coming in September 20th and 21st. That's a weekend where Arkansas is not hosting a football game. And then Arkansas, we know there's also a public scheduled announcement for Tay Kenny, the 5-star guard out of Kentucky, plays an overtime lead, another 6'2" guard, a lead guard, scheduled to come in September 26th to the 28th. And that's the weekend, and the only weekend in September that the football Hogs host a game, and that's against Notre Dame. That's going to be a big one. So you've got 3 big visits set up, 2 that are publicly known, one that's tentative, hasn't been put out or released yet with Erfan Diani, but his guardian has given me those dates. And we'll see if anything changes on that. Of course, we'll come back and report that. But these are not far off in the distance. Again, a month later from now, when Diani is planned to be on campus, and then through September, at least two more visitors that we're aware of right now, and they're all big time. They're all priority targets. They're all 5 stars. Deanne, technically, the services don't have him as a 5 star. I do. Again, I've got him as the sixth best player in the country at 7'1", 280, and everything he brings to the table. So these are perfect opportunities, not only where JJ is riding this wave right now of being the talk of the grassroots season, and maybe the guy that did more for himself to raise his profile, to raise his claim as not only a 5 star, but a top 10 guy. And in my example, he's a top 5 guy with a case to be made. He's the best player in the country. Those things can be debated, but you use that, you utilize that, and he can become a recruiter. And there's more than one reason that this makes sense. We talked about Calipari's track record just using Darius Acuff in this last recruiting cycle. So it's in the wheelhouse of what Calipari's comfortable doing and what he sees as a value. So that's number one. I think the other part of this that's really good is not only that JJ Andrews' name and profile is skyrocketing right now, but he is a great guy. I mean, he's not just a great kid, big smile on his face all the time. If you cover the fact that I've covered him as much as I have in person, you see what you don't see on a live stream, or if you're watching it on, a broadcast, you can keep an eye on a player more than what cameras pick up, and you watch their demeanor, you watch their body language, you watch how they interact with teammates, whether the chips are up or down, things aren't going well. He's a great teammate. He picks up teammates with his attitude and that smile and his confidence that you can turn things around. He's not one of those guys where he's a pain in the ass to be around if you're a teammate. And so I think that would translate to recruiting and opportunities to be around other players. He's interacted with a lot of the players Arkansas has recruited by default, by MBPA Top 100 camp, for example, where his team, they broke the top players in the country onto different teams to compete head to head. That's basically what that camp is about. Yeah, there's some instruction and stuff like that, but there's a lot of games being played through that MBPA Top 100 camp, a prestigious event. And JJ was teamed up with two of Arkansas's priority recruiting targets, Arfan Diani and Abdou Toure, the 6'5" wing out of Connecticut that Arkansas has really prioritized. We've talked ad nauseum about that. He's already been on campus for a visit, but I've been told, and this is one of my recent intel nuggets, is that he wants to come back for an official visit. All right, so we'll see where recruiting goes with each of these players, especially the ones with visits lined up. But JJ with teammates with both of those guys, and so when you get an opportunity, even just through a weekend, to size that up, you had Calipari and the entire staff there watching those guys, how they interact together, how they look together on the court. But it serves multiple purposes. It helps you further along as a staff, identifying who you want on your team and who do you want to pursue. And then for the players, they get to know each other a little bit. And in a case like JJ, where he's already committed, he could talk to some of these guys and has more to say to them, more familiarity with them. Maybe there's connections with certain guys. I remember the Guardian, I reported this to you guys recently, bringing up to me the fact, I didn't bring it up, where he was just giving me an answer because I asked. He offered up the chemistry between Arfan Diani, his guy, and JJ Andrews, who he knows committed to Arkansas. He brought that up as a positive. So those are the kind of things that it makes sense is, why would you bring someone on campus when these other guys are coming in to visit? Stuff like that. It can only help. It can't hurt, especially, again, with the kind of guy that JJ Andrews is. A fierce competitor on the court, but a great teammate and big smile on his face all the time, and just a class young man. And it's his home state too. There's a level of pride with that. He's a legacy. His dad played up there. So I think there's a lot of things you inject him into these recruiting scenarios, whether he shows up on campus. I mean, you got a couple of football games. JJ has not been bashful about attending Razorback games, mostly basketball. He did that on his official visit back in late December. He was back in North Little Rock for Arkansas's game there against UCA. He's been to the North Little Rock games every time they've had one since he's been, sort of on the radar as a recruit going back to his 9th grade year, because he was already big, strong, and good. But again, he's not bashful or shy about attending these Razorback sporting events. And so, you've got a couple of opportunities with two of those visits scheduled, plus maybe the weekend, even when you're not hosting a game, when Jordan Smith Jr. is going to be in town. And I talk about, you talk about the chemistry between guys like Arfan Diani and JJ Andrews. What about the chemistry he'd have with a guy like Jordan Smith Jr., it'd be outstanding. It would be outstanding. So it makes sense why Calipari might lean on him a little bit and have him involved. We'll see what happens. But these visit dates aren't that far off, and now you're thinking about connecting, using J.J. Andrews as a connector to not only what he can do to help you once he's a player at Arkansas in season after next, but how he can maybe help and pitch in on helping deliver some of these other guys. And so all of that, becomes something to keep an eye on. All right, real quick, I'm going to do, before we get to Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams, just an update on Mikael Bruce McCrommon, the 6'6" wing that's kind of on the radar as of late. Not a ranked guy, played on the made hoop circuit. Pittsburgh area guy. We know Calipari and his Pittsburgh ties. Great players that he's brought in, including 3 to Arkansas already. When you look at Adu Thero, who's moved on after one season at Arkansas to the NBA. And then 2 players on the current roster. We mentioned Malik Thomas, the 5-star top 10 rated 2 guard, plus his buddy Amir Brown, who's a walk-on 5'10" guard, all from the Pittsburgh area. Well, Mikael Bruce McCrommon's the next guy that Calipari was referencing him vaguely. Can't mention them by name, recruits, until they're signed, sealed, and delivered and certified by the NCAA. Then you can, but you can't talk about any names out prior to that. But he was referencing after that post-practice press conference that he was going out that weekend. That was the first July live eval period, basically 2 weekends ago. And saying he was going to check on a player that he might add as a long-term retention kind of guy, developmental guy. And it turns out that it's this player that we were able to identify. Now, we said at the time, and we continue to say, he framed it as though because Arkansas still could add a player to this 2025-6 roster, it seemed like he was indicating maybe it's somebody to fill that spot. But if it's a long-term developmental guy, and we've said this all along, typically a reclass, if it's a 2026 player, it would make more sense if it was an unsigned senior a la Paulo Samito, who they added back in June. But it's a 2026 guy who's not highly rated. Usually if you're going to reclass up, you're a guy that's on a fast track as a high-level guy to maybe be a one-and-done and get to the NBA draft sooner. For a guy at this stage of high school play, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to maybe do that. And we questioned, would this really be a guy that would come in and fill the roster for 2025-26? Or is this just a guy they're looking in the 26 class, not the priority type of recruit, but a guy that they would go ahead and sign as part of 26 and look at as a developmental down the road? Does he redshirt? How does that look early? And we'll see where it goes. And maybe he's a multi-year guy and part of your retention plan later. It's looking more and more like, so here's what the update is. I'm not going to really call it intel. This is something I found online a few days ago. It's looking like, if anything, if this materializes, and remember, Calipari went out and watched him that first July live eval session. This past weekend, it was Brad Calipari, John Calipari's son, who's a staffer and Arkansas's leader in player development. It was he who went out to watch at a Made Hoops event in Baltimore to watch Mikael Bruce McCrommon. So we know the staff has done more than just say we're going to go put eyes on him, which is what Calipari initially said. He sent his son out a week later. So, this looks like it's progressing to something, but the information, the update today is it's looking more and more like if this happens and he's added to the recruiting beyond just going out and seeing him to a point where they offer him, maybe bring him in for a visit, whatever, and try to add him to a recruiting class, it's looking more and more like it will stick with 26. And which would mean he would come in with J.J. Andrews and that group after a senior year of high school. And the reason I believe that, and this is why the update is here, I found an article online early in the week from a local Pittsburgh area media somewhere in Pennsylvania, talking about his spring and summer, some of the recruiting updates, Pitt in the ACC, the hometown school, showing some interest there, some other lower level D1 schools. But it also talked to him and I think quoted him asking him about his upcoming senior season there in the Pittsburgh area for the high school team that he played on. So, that indicates to me that there was no discussion in that article about a reclass. When I've brought that topic up to him, he's declined to to discuss anything like that politely. And then we thought, well, let's just see how this plays out. So, I'm not convinced that there's not a reclass here, but I'm much closer to being convinced that he's probably going to stick class of 2026, and he'll be added to that class as a developmental guy, similar to how Elamir Javich and even Paulo Samito were added as late, but they were added late. This is a little bit putting the cart before the horse in terms of timing. But so what? If Calipari got a tip that there's a guy and he's got relationships with people back in Pittsburgh, hey, here's a guy that might be someone to look at and help you later. Why not do it now instead of waiting until the spring, right? So there's more than one way to do that. All right, 21 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Let's transition now to Isaiah Joe and JWill Williams. I was in Fort Smith yesterday. Had a really good time up there. I had a parade to honor these guys, the hometown heroes coming off that NBA championship for the Oklahoma City Thunder in what was an unprecedented season. When you look at the regular season, some of the accomplishments during the playoffs, like the biggest margin blowout wins, I think they had 4 or 5 that were 30 or more points, which no NBA team had ever done that. They had some other standards they set in the regular season that no NBA team had ever done. And then they ended up winning an NBA title. So they get this celebration, which was great to see, because these are young men that grew up in the city. They didn't relocate there. They weren't transplants. These are guys that have been there, grew up playing those playgrounds, in different, obviously, gymnasiums coming up through middle school, elementary school, then middle school at Kimmons, Fort Smith Northside. And it's a great story. They had a media veil the room was packed. A lot of media showed up, some from the state of Oklahoma, and obviously in the local Northwest Arkansas media. Right off the bat, I'm asking these guys, is this a full circle moment with everything you've been through growing up in this city? Then you play, both of you are Razorbacks, and then you end up at Oklahoma City at the exact same time. And you didn't walk into a championship environment. You walked into really an organization that was just trying to figure out what's going on in terms of results, because they hadn't been very good. And in year one, they were kind of middle of the pack. I think they advanced to a play-in game. They were 40-42, something like that. So, both of them gave great answers, but that was kind of the start of things. The parade was really cool. I put out video of that. And then both players, when everything concluded, there was a large gathering in the bakery district there in downtown Fort Smith. And they, on a balcony overlooking a large crowd, they both again hoisted the Larry O'Brien Trophy, which is the NBA championship trophy that the Thunder allowed them to bring down to Fort Smith. We've seen this before with Moses Moody and Bobby Portis when they come back to Little Rock in the summer and have their foundation events and have fans and kids for camps and all that. They walk around with the Larry and let everybody touch it. So that was one of those moments. And Isaiah Joe and JWill Williams, the mayor of Fort Smith, read a proclamation. Both of them were honored in Oklahoma City, by the way, with their own days. July 16th is JWill Williams Day in Oklahoma City. July 18th is Isaiah Joe Day. All right. So pretty big deal yesterday. But the one thing I want to recap real quick is their careers. Isaiah Joe won a state title as a junior in the 2016-17 season at Fort Smith Northside. When he was a senior, JWill Williams was a sophomore, and they advanced, Fort Smith Northside advanced to the state title game. And remember, this is the highest classification. It's oscillated. The AAA changes it all the time. It's a combination of either 7A or 6A. So sometimes it's 7A, then they change it to 6A. It's 6A again for now. So I can't tell you precisely what classification that far back, because they've jumbled it up so much, but it's the highest classification. All right, so Zai wins it in 16-17 without JWill. Then his teammates, senior and sophomore, the following season in 2017-18, they get to the state title game, but they lose to Moses Moody in North Little Rock. And that was when Moody was a sophomore at North Little Rock, same class of 2020 as JWill Williams. And then Moody goes off to Montverde Academy after that season. Remember, he played his last 2 seasons at the powerhouse, the independent school powerhouse out of Florida, Montverde Academy, his junior and senior season. So those two, Isaiah and JWill, did not win a title together. Isaiah, after that season, he was a senior, off to Arkansas Razorbacks as a freshman, where he tied Jamal Murray, who's an NBA All-Star, All-Pro, and NBA champion in his own right with the Denver Nuggets. He tied Jamal Murray, who played for Cal at Kentucky, for most made threes in a freshman season. They share that record to this day. That's how good Isaiah Joe was. And we know he had injury problems in year 2, which was Eric Patrick Melsman was his head coach for that year. And then Isaiah goes off to the NBA. But let's go back. So Zay and JWill did not win a state title together, but in JWill's junior year, while Isaiah Joe was a freshman, he led Fort Smith Northside to the title game, and they won the state championship against Bryant and KK Robinson, who ended up being also the same class as Moses Moody, Jalen Williams, and they ended up being freshman Razorbacks together. Let's go back to when JWill was a freshman at Arkansas. Isaiah Joe would have been a junior. Isaiah Joe initially declared for the NBA draft. This was when COVID blew up, and there was a lot of uncertainty. Remember, it ended the previous season when Isaiah Joe was a sophomore. He and Mason Jones helped Arkansas beat Vanderbilt in that first round of that ugly Wednesday night, matchup where you got the low 11 through 14 teams or whatever it was at that time playing. And that was the end of basketball season, was when Arkansas beat Vanderbilt, advanced the Thursday game, but there were no games after that. All right. So Isaiah Joe's considering coming back for his junior season in 2020-21, comes back to school. He declares for the draft, and then he decides to withdraw. He's going to come back for a junior season. He goes back to Fayetteville. He's on campus. He's in the building. He's in the performance center for at least 2 weeks. And in that time frame is when the Big Ten, I think the Ivy League decided not to play a basketball season, and then football or basketball. Then football season was coming up, and I think there were some question marks about whether the Big Ten was even going to play football. There was all kinds of problems there, and Isaiah Joe already had a draft guarantee by the Philadelphia 76ers. So he was back on campus maybe 2 weeks. I don't know if he did any limited practices or any of the on-court stuff with Jalen Williams and that freshman group, Moses Moody, KK Robinson, Devo Davis, or not. I don't think he did much there. But he was there back with the team for a couple of weeks before he decided to go back to the draft based on that guarantee, because the NBA was already shown that it had a success playing in a bubble and finishing out its regular season and then having a playoffs all the way to a championship. And so there was a proven quantity there that they were making things work, whereas other college sports and other pro stuff, not so much. And so that was more of a sure thing. So those guys never played together at Arkansas. But what's interesting is Jalen Williams, that was the first of 2 of back-to-back Elite 8 runs that Arkansas had. And people say all the time, had that first team, which I think was Eric Patrick Melsman's best team, that first Elite 8 team, where it was Jalen Williams, Moses Moody, who had arguably the best freshman season ever at Arkansas. He and Scotty Thurman are right there neck and neck for that claim. Corliss up there. But Jalen Tate, Justin Smith, you had a great group of art players. JD Note is your 6th man, right? And he was an All-American, a 3rd-team All-American the following season. A first-team All-SEC was JD Note. So I think that was EPM's best team. And just imagine that team with Isaiah Joe. Maybe that was a team that could have upset Baylor and had its own path to a Final Four and maybe a national championship. We'll never know. But the intersections of these guys are so rich because they were both, again, state titleists at Fort Smith Northside, just not together. And the year they lost, you're talking about another a recent NBA champion, Moses Moody with Golden State. It's how good the talent is in the state. And it certainly speaks to just all these intersections are really cool. And the fact that Isaiah Joe, who goes to Philadelphia, plays 2 seasons, he's released after preseason 3 years ago, and Oklahoma City signs him. Well, that's right off the heels of Oklahoma City. A few months before drafting Jalen Williams out of Arkansas in the early 30s, early second round draft pick. So those guys literally came into Oklahoma City together at the same time, even though Isaiah Joe was already a 2-year veteran in the NBA, the first 2 seasons spent at Philadelphia. And so they have been a big part of the success at Oklahoma City. It's very rare to see this kind of career, I guess you would say, symmetry, running parallel lines and then coming together at times. And then, But the timelines are interesting, and they both have had great success. Whether it's collegians, when you look at Jalen Williams helping two teams in his 2 years there get to Elite Eights, Zai JWill being one of the top marksmen ever in the SEC in his limited 2 years there. What they did together in high school, or what they did without each other at the same high school, and getting to 3 straight title games, right? Again, when they were playing together, they didn't win it. And now they've won a title together at Oklahoma City, and they helped build that run. They helped author that what happened there. It's incredible. This is so to go back to their hometown where it all started. That city went nuts for those guys. I mean, there were thousands of people lined up on the streets. Again, I've got video out on my. If you go to my homepage on X, Twitter, you can see photos, video, the media part, and some of that stuff where they're talking. It's really good stuff. But you could just see the pride in the city and how excited the fans were. And I think Zai JWill was asked, you had that huge parade in downtown Oklahoma City a few days after winning a title. Do you think this could, come close to that? Well, not in numbers, of course not. He said, maybe there won't be as many people. He goes, but I promise you, you might feel like it is because of how loud it's going to get. And he was right. Excitement was in the air. A good time was had by all. I know I enjoyed myself. Good to see those guys again. And also, I want to wrap up with this. So it was a great day for both of them. These are memories I'll never forget, and they're still young. They both signed contract extensions in the last 2 years with Oklahoma City. Obviously, that doesn't prohibit them from being traded at some point or something going in a different direction. But they're both young in what looks like could be a dynasty. So this may be the first of many parades to come. You can't count chickens before they hatch. So you embrace the moment when it happens. And I thought both of those guys did a great job of doing that. And the last thing I want to say is I want to thank all the people in Northwest Arkansas, Fort Smith area, from Oklahoma who came up and greeted me, said hello to me, thanked me for the coverage that I bring. Some men and women, and some of the women hugged me. And really nice. I mean, it was really nice to be greeted that way. I never want to be when I go to these events, I never want it. To be about me or anything like that. And certainly this wasn't what I'm saying here. It's just the kindness of people. And I respect people that do that. I think some people are afraid or, I don't want to bother him. But believe me, when you hear that, it makes you motivated to want to continue to do stuff like this. So thank you for those who came up and said hello and told me a little bit about yourselves. And certainly the fact that you continue to ask me questions about recruiting, who's next, those kind of things. I love talking basketball, so always do that if you see me and you want to come up and say something. All right, thanks for being here on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. If you haven't done it already and you like the content, please hit subscribe, like, and share. That helps us out. We appreciate you. We should be back on tomorrow with more to talk about, but until then, thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon.